Recording. So now we're going to look at coming on guard. The epee guard is quite interesting because the concerns with epee dueling were a little bit different to some of the other weapons in terms of how particularly the weapon arm is attacked. And whereas Hutton, for example, really tries to use the medium guard of foil as kind of a guard for pretty much all of the weapons he does, which is why we've seen basically variants of that guard throughout most of the weapons we've done. He takes it as much as he takes it from foil. When you actually get to using a practical dueling weapon, the guard is a bit different. So to come on guard, start off with, just put your feet in an L like this. You want your heels in line and the heels in line with the toes of your weapon side. So you want basically a straight line between your two heels and the toes of your weapon side, and then your toes of your non-weapon side, your offside, basically pointing out at 90 degrees. Some people do say that you can sit with your heel in line with the instep, and this will give you a more side-on profile. I don't, because I like to have the same footwork for as many weapons as possible, because that makes my life easy. But again, what you do exactly is up to you. So then to come to stance, all you do is move your feet to about 2 of your foot widths apart, maybe a bit narrower. Certainly if you're standing very high, like I kind of have a bad habit of doing, you want much narrower, much narrower kind of stance. Some people like to feel more settled, more rooted, and also to get a longer lunge, like to sit with their feet even further apart. I think 2 foot widths is a good compromise, and I like that. But the problem is, of course, so then you want to bend your knees, because like I was saying before, if you're standing very, very high, this can be very, very unstable. So what you want to do is bend your knees to a nice, comfortable spot. I find about this, I don't really know how to describe this other than, comfortable squats, you feel like there's a spring in your legs. I can squat lower, but when I get down to here, I can't lunge very well. Whereas from here, I can just kind of explode forward. So it's nice and bouncy. For the weapon, I'm just going to take my sword, holding it just above the hilt here, let it rest in front of my body. I'm going to reach up, loosen my shoulders up. This step isn't really that necessary in coming on guard, but I like to do it, especially because I kind of hurt my shoulder the other day doing weights. And then from here, my backhand bends to 90 degrees and sits with the upper arm basically out horizontal, so nice and behind me. The front arm comes down, avoids clipping my roof. I'm really looking forward to COVID being over and having like a nice high roof all the time. I want to bring it down so that my forearm is horizontal and my elbow, the way it's described is at the height of the breast, which I kind of interpret as being like the lower bit of the pectoral muscle, so down here, because they also said to keep the arm bent. But I want to have a very, very horizontal forearm, because that keeps my arm behind the shell. I want my blade to be horizontal, because that makes it hard for my opponent to really put leverage or do something to my blade to displace it. That makes it, that doesn't mean that they have to put their blade somewhere out here or high or low, somewhere away from me, which gives me a bit of time to react. Whereas if my blade is pointing up like this, it would for say foil fencing, what can happen is my opponent can basically use their sword blade to hit my blade and also me in a single motion, which I don't like. So I have it out basically straight. And one thing that Jules Jacob says, and I think also Andre in his epee manual says, is you don't actually vary the height or the angle based on the height of your fencer as you would intuitively do. It's always meant to be straight, like just straight horizontal. Although I have a bad habit of varying the height, but when I do it by bending the arm rather than by moving the sword up and down, because you don't want too much angle in your blade. So let's just show you that from the front. So this is the epee guard. Nice and straight, nice and relaxed. The other thing as well, as I was saying before, you want to be fairly relaxed when you're standing. You don't want to be too stiff, because if you get too stiff, again, the first thing you'll do to move is to relax your muscles, which will mean that you've created an extra step in movement. But the other thing as well is, if you're very, very stiff, if one part of you moves, it will pull the rest with it, which, you know, is not always great when you're trying to do very fine movements. All right, so just before we move on, are there any questions? I'll take that as a no.